Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, The Crosswalk. Over the last couple of days I was really thinking about what I was going to say in my first video. I was actually kind of nervous because being my first real video, I didn't want to, I didn't want it to tank and no one want to ever come back and watch my videos, but we'll see how it goes. But anyways, I really got to thinking, and I realized that for you guys, you're going to be sitting and watching and listening to me express my thoughts and feelings and express things from my life about my faith and about my God and about the Bible and things that are very personal. And I figured if you are going to take the time to listen to what I have to say, then the least I could do was share a little bit about myself so that you guys could sort of get to know who I am and where I've come from. So that's kind of where we're going to kick it off with this video, just sharing a little bit about myself and kind of my story. So here it goes. About 25 years ago, I was born to my mother and father. My dad's name is Ron, my mom's name is Cheryl, and I also had an older sister named Jessica, and she was just about 2 years older than me. And boy, for the first like 10, maybe 15 years or so, she was like my arch nemesis. No, we had our moments, but just like any brother and sister, we had our moments where we really loved each other, and then the moments where I really didn't like her at all, and I'm sure she felt the same way about me. So growing up, I didn't grow up in a Christian home at all. My family was not very religious in any sense. We would go to church for Easter and Christmas and things like that with my grandparents, but for the most part we didn't really do the whole church thing. Growing up, I always had an idea that there was a God, mainly because and I'm not sure who was more of an influence in this way, but I believe it was more of my mom, who would always, I would ask her questions growing up. I was always like, Mom, what's this and what's that? And even Dad too. I asked both my parents and my sister, like, I was always asking questions, why? I always wanted to know. And so I'm pretty sure it was my mom that I would ask, like, Mom, is there a God? And she would always tell me that, yeah, there is a God, or she would tell me she believed there was a God out there somewhere, and that this God, was looking down on us, and she believed in a heaven, and that good people would go to heaven and things like that. So that's kind of the background of the majority of what I believed about God, and that was really the extent of what I knew about God. So moving on, I grew up in a very lenient household, and the reason I say that is because in most people's eyes and to most people's standards, my parents were not very strict. We really were given the freedom and the trust to do whatever we wanted. We were never restricted from doing a lot of things, and a lot of that I see as a good way of my parents sort of letting us make our own mistakes and letting us learn from our own mistakes. And my mom and my dad were always both there for us if we ever needed them, and if we wanted to talk about things, they were very open and honest about things. But for the most part, we pretty much did whatever we wanted to do. And for the most part, we didn't take that for granted. I know there were some times where, Mom or Dad would try to ground us, and, 2 minutes later I'd stick my head out the door and say, Mom, am I ungrounded? And she'd be like, all right, fine, just don't do it again, or whatever. So, but my family was really based on love, based on, being good people. And my parents always taught us to love others, to respect people, to treat others as you would want them to treat you. So we were raised in a great way in my mind. I mean, obviously, looking back now, it wasn't in a Christian mindset, but at the same time, my mom and my dad both really instilled in both my sister and I to just be good people. And I think that's a lot more, than what we're seeing in today's world. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for being good examples for me. So as I started to get a little bit older, I always did well in school. I got good grades. I did a lot of sports. I played sports. I was always involved in things. I had a lot of friends. And so life was going pretty well. It wasn't until about, I would say right before high school, that I started making some really poor choices. Choices involving a type of drink that you're not supposed to drink when you're as young as I was. And so that really could have gotten me in a lot more trouble than it did. So, I can look back now and thank God that he saved me from a lot of trouble that I could have gotten in. But still, there were a lot of times that I just made some bad choices, and I really learned from some really bad mistakes, and I paid some consequences for that. So, but it was right about that time, freshman year in high school, that I really started, I started trying to be in with the in crowd, and so I would be doing a lot of things, the whole peer pressure thing, getting, going to parties and getting into alcohol, and thank God I never did any drugs. There was a lot of pressure on me at that point to do drugs, but I never did, and now I can look back and thank God for that. But then the freshman year was a big change in my life, because I had a best friend. Now, I had a lot of friends, but my best friend at that point was a guy named Weston Gibson, and shout out to Weston if you're watching this. Weston and I were like two peas in a pod. I mean, literally, we were joined at the hip. We did everything together. We lived life together, and for the most part, we were inseparable. And freshman year changed a lot of things, because somewhere along the road, Weston got invited to a church youth group called The Refuge, and all of a sudden Weston's life just changed completely. And so there was a period of time where he became what me and my friends would call the Jesus freak. He would bring his Bible to school, he would talk to people about Jesus, he'd pray, he'd do all these things. And most of my friends were pretty weirded out about all of it, but we still loved him. He was still one of the boys, but we always gave him a hard time for it. But he always took it so well, and naturally Weston would always invite me. He would invite me pretty much every week to the youth group with him. And for a long time I was like, no, I don't want to be in that. And I thought, like a lot of people think, that Christians are a bunch of nut jobs that are brainwashed and that believe in this God to solve all the problems and things like that. So I was kind of in that camp, and at the same time I didn't want my friends to think that I was weird. I didn't want them to think that, oh, this guy's a Jesus freak or whatever. But it was at this point in my life where I really started feeling that urge or that pull from God. I could tell that my heart was starting to be drawn to Him, even before I knew what that meant or what that was. So fast forwarding a little bit into the end of my freshman year, I was 15, and my perfect little family that I loved so much actually ended up being broken for a long time, and that was because my parents got divorced. Now there's a whole long story with that. I'm not going to get into any details, but it was pretty ugly for a while. My family, that, like I said, I had this perfect image of my family. I had this perfect mentality of what my family was and who we were, and that really began to just crumble in front of my eyes. And so that really hurt in a lot of ways, and on the outside I was just fine, but on the inside I was truly hurting. So once my parents got divorced, things really started to change in my life. There was a lot of depression, a lot of darkness, wondering, what's the point of life if relationships just get destroyed? And I was a 15-year-old kid that was starting to contemplate the big life philosophical questions, like, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? What's the point of all of this? And it never got to a point where I was suicidal or anything like that, but really starting to just think, if I wasn't here, if I wasn't even alive, would anyone notice? Would anyone care? What was the point of me even being here? And so being 15 and asking these questions, I really can now look back and see that God truly was starting to draw me in closer and closer. And at this point, I still had no idea who He was. So I go into sophomore year at high school, and for some reason, I just decided that I was done with the party scene. I was done with drinking. I was done with cussing. I just decided that I'm going to start living life in a better way. I didn't know why. I didn't know why I wanted to do that or where it came from, but I just said, you know what, I'm done with it. And I just decided to change my life. And it wouldn't be until later on in sophomore year that I would realize that I couldn't do that on my own. I tried real hard, and I tried to be a good person. I tried to stop doing these things, but ultimately, it was going to be God. It was going to be Jesus himself that began to change me from the inside out. So, at the end of sophomore year, Weston invited me to church for the last time that I finally said, you know what, I'll go. I want to go check it out. I want to see what this is about, because I had seen his life transform, do a complete 180. He was walking in the same direction that I was, and all of a sudden he was heading in the other direction, and he was pursuing this righteousness. He was pursuing this life that was worth something that I really wanted. So I decided to check it out. Now, I had previously gone with that youth group on a trip. They went like paintballing, and I went with them. So I had met some of the kids, and so it was a cool experience though. When I first got to the youth group called The Refuge at Scottsdale First Assembly, I believe it was in March of 2006. That was, and this is stretching, I don't know exactly what day, but that's about the time when I was 16 years old, when God found me, or I found him. Weston had invited me to church, and at that point, that was the turning point of my life. That was the time when God truly grabbed a hold of me, and I started learning about God. I found out who Jesus was and what Jesus had done for me. And I won't go into the details of what the gospel or the good news is just yet. But just know that from what I had heard from the youth pastor and from what I had seen in my own best friend and the people that were surrounding me, I knew that this is what I had been looking for. I was looking to fill that hole, that void in my life, and nothing quite fit. The alcohol didn't fit. The good grades in school didn't fit. The popularity didn't fit. The getting girls to like me. None of that satisfied. So I knew that this was it. This was what I had been looking for. And so from there, my life just transformed. And you can ask anybody, and I mean anybody that knew me back then, from freshman to sophomore year and beyond, it was truly supernatural the way that my life transformed. Like I said, on the outside I was a good kid, but you would just see the change in the joy in my life. I had true joy. I started to read my Bible. I started to pray. I started to do these things, and I was living life with purpose. I was living life with a meaning, and you could just see it in my life. And that is a testimony to the power of God in our lives. We try to change ourselves. We try to do good, but our righteousness, in what the Bible says, is as filthy rags compared to the righteousness of God. He's perfect. And for all the mistakes I've made and all the things that I've done wrong, I could never add up to the righteousness, to the perfection, to the holiness that God was. And when you start to realize this, it can be very depressing, but then the hope of it all is Jesus himself. And I'll get into more of that later, but just know that was the turning point in my life. And I truly believe you can ask any Christian, and they would be able to tell you exactly when that point was in their life, when all of a sudden things just flipped. And now I was living not for myself, but I was living for God. And I was living for a purpose and living for a meaning, and I had hope in my future, where before I didn't really have that hope. So going on from there, I finished out high school. I played on the football team, and I did some wrestling in there, and really had a good time. I made a lot of good friends in high school. And then after high school, I went to college. Now here's another little fun fact about me. Like I said, I did really well in high school. I got really good grades, and because of that, I got a full ride scholarship to pretty much any in-state university. But we all knew that I wasn't going to go to U of A because I'm all about the Sun Devils. So I accepted a full ride scholarship to Arizona State University, and everything was great. I applied, I had been accepted, everything was going great, and all of a sudden God put a halt in my plans. And I couldn't explain it, I didn't understand it, but ultimately he was leading me somewhere else. And he led me to check out this little Christian college that I had really never even heard of. I've driven by it before, but it was called Southwestern College. And it was right down the road from my house, maybe like 5 miles or so. And I was nervous because I was like, wait, God, you want me to throw away the full ride scholarship and just go to this tiny little Christian college that I think maybe had like 200 or 300 students at that time? I was like, what in the world are you talking about? So I checked out Grand Canyon University, which was much bigger, but even at Grand Canyon, I just didn't quite feel that peace about going there, that God really wanted to train me in his ways and train me in the ministry. And so he led me back to Southwestern College. So that's where I ended up attending college. No, I did not have a full ride scholarship, and I have a lot of student loans to show for that. But God had a plan. He had a plan that I didn't see. And so I went through and I ended up I graduated with my bachelor's in Christian ministries with a minor in music. And I also met my beautiful wife, Melinda, there. So obviously, he had the plan set aside for me, and I was just kind of walking out his path. So God has truly blessed me, and now I have a beautiful wife. And from there, it just kind of, I met my new family, the Marslenders, and man, they are fantastic. Huge blessing to be a part of their family. And I know that my family is super blessed to have Melinda as part of their family now. And, I've always tried to be involved in music ministry and youth ministry, wherever I can be used. I really do enjoy just being a part of the church and being involved in ministry and helping people, especially youth, because coming from where I came from at 16 years old and seeing my life radically change, I want to help other students and other teenagers that were my age, that are that age where I was, to experience the same life change and experience the same love that God has for them, because it is life-changing. It truly is. So we got married and we lived in a couple different places. We did apartment life for a little while, if any of you know what that is. And then somewhere along the line, God said, I felt God was telling me that I was to continue on in my training in ministry. I knew that God had called me to full-time ministry, but I didn't know exactly where. But I knew that my next step was going to be more training, which was going to be seminary for me. So we decided that, I was going to attend seminary, and then it was kind of deciding where to go and, what school. And then when we kind of narrowed it down to locations, we decided to choose Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary. And they had a few different campuses, I think in Washington, Northern California, Southern California, Scottsdale, Arizona, and then in Colorado up by Denver. And so, we were young, we have no kids yet, and my wife loves Colorado, and I've now fallen in love with Colorado as well. And so, we decided, why not? Let's go. So that's why we're here. And so now we're here in Colorado Springs, and I have the best job that I could possibly imagine. I never realized that God had this in my plan, but now I'm working at Compassion International, which is a huge blessing. Melinda's got a job. I'm also running sound at our church. And so there's a lot of things that God's got us involved in here in Colorado. And so we're just super blessed. And that's basically my story. I know that I skipped over a lot, and there's a lot more to be said, but I wanted to keep it short and sweet. So now you guys kind of know who I am, where I've come from. You hopefully understand a little bit better of what my family life was, and how I met God and Jesus, and how I got to where I am today. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me, maybe you want me to follow up on something, feel free to comment on this video underneath. Give it a thumbs up. And like I said, subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined, because it would just be a great way to support me. And I'm going to try to be getting these out every single week. And so my goal is to live life with you guys. My goal is to be very transparent and allow you to see into my life a little bit and how I'm walking out this faith. I love to walk out my faith with you guys. And for those of you who don't know the Lord, I hope that you would be encouraged by my videos, not thinking that I'm trying to shove my faith down your throat, but that you would just be open-minded to the things I have to say. And again, if you have any questions or if you want to say anything, if you have my phone number, you can just text me or call me or whatever. But if not, you can feel free to leave comments below. I'll try to answer those questions in upcoming videos. But yeah, that's all I got. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for sticking it out with me, and we'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.